Today at 1, tens of thousands of people queue to pay their respects to the Queen as details of her funeral are announced. A sombre moment of reflection as people file in quietly to see the Queen lying in state at Westminster Hall. The queue outside is now several miles long, and people from all around the country have travelled to join it and to say a final farewell.
We waited, I think we got in line around 11:30 last night, so it was a long wait, but it was definitely worth it for those couple of minutes in there.
At Sandringham, the Queen's private estate in Norfolk, the Prince and Princess of Wales view the tributes the public have left. Buckingham Palace have announced that on the day of the funeral, the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Sussex will once again walk next to each other behind the Queen's coffin, also this lunchtime. In Ukraine, amid the devastation of conflict, more claims of atrocities committed by Russian troops. What will happen to energy bills next month? We take a look at what the changes might mean for you. And a splash of pink at the funeral of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, killed by a gunman in Liverpool last month.
And coming up on the BBC News Channel, a moment of history for England's cricketers as they arrive in Pakistan for their first tour there in 17 years.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. Members of the public have been queuing through the night for the Queen's lying in state in its first full day as details of Her Majesty's funeral are released by Buckingham Palace. Westminster Hall is open to the public day and night until early Monday morning for people to pay their respects to the late Queen. Her coffin is guarded at all hours by units from the Sovereign's Bodyguard, the Household Division or Yeoman Warders of the Tower of London. We'll have more on the details of the funeral a little later, but first here's our correspondent Caroline Hawley.
It's a week since the country learned of Queen Elizabeth's death, a week of national public mourning and of private grief. And right now, thousands upon thousands of people wait patiently to pay their last respects. They've been on their feet all night, and there are hours left to go before they'll get to Westminster Hall. The queue, several miles long, snakes along the banks of the River Thames.
Wristband, please. Thank you. Wristband.
It's been orderly, organised, and by all accounts a friendly experience. A coming together of people who want to show their gratitude and respect.
Look at all these people, you know, it's they're coming for their Queen. There's even tourists here. We've met so many nice people, so it's been lovely. And I would regret if I didn't come. Absolutely regret.
Today is the first full day of the Queen lying in state before her funeral on Monday. Last night, Emily and her two sons arrived in London from Birmingham.
You remember where the end of the queue is, Freddie?
It's London Bridge, Mummy.
London Bridge. Let's go and catch the tube.
Yes!
Joining people from all corners of the country and all ages. No bedtime, no school today. For them, being here was much too important to miss.
We've just come out after seeing Her Majesty. It was absolutely amazing.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thoroughly worth the 6-hour wait that we had.
In the middle of last night, out of public view, the military was busy rehearsing for its role in this historic moment. Preparations for the Queen's death have been years, decades in the making, meticulous plans, now being meticulously practised and finessed. 142 sailors from the Royal Navy will draw the state gun carriage used for Queen Victoria's funeral that will take the Queen's coffin to Westminster Abbey on Monday. Pallbearers even practised their final duty to their former Commander-in-Chief, carrying an empty black coffin. At 10:44, the Queen's coffin will be taken from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey, a solemn journey that will take 8 minutes. It was here that she was crowned back in 1953. The funeral service, attended by heads of state from every corner of the globe, starts at 11 a.m. It will be followed by a national 2-minute silence. The route of the procession goes past Buckingham Palace and on to Wellington Arch, where her coffin will be transferred into the state hearse. The late monarch will then be driven by road to Windsor Castle for a more intimate service at St George's Chapel, attended by members of the royal family and staff who served her throughout her reign. She will then be laid to rest in the evening in a private service. At Sandringham in Norfolk today, the Prince and Princess of Wales came to greet well-wishers and to look at the many, many floral tributes to the Queen. Inside Westminster Hall, for these members of the public, the long wait to say goodbye was over. Everyone here with their own feelings, memories, emotions, as the country prepares with pomp and pageantry to bid its final farewell to Britain's longest ever reigning monarch. Caroline Hawley, BBC News.
Well, our political correspondent Ben Wright is watching proceedings inside Westminster Hall, and we can join him now. Ben.
Rita, after hours of queuing and the chatter of the crowd, the atmosphere suddenly changes when people arrive here in Westminster Hall. The vast medieval space is silent, and from the top of the stone steps, people see the Queen's coffin for the first time, raised high on a plinth, draped with a royal standard, framed by 4 candles and a rotation of guards. The Cabinet Ministers Ben Wallace and Alistair Jack have also joined the vigil this afternoon, both of them members of the King's Bodyguard in Scotland.
I would like to remind you that the BBC is offering a continuous 24-hour view of the Queen's lying in state for those who want to pay their respects but can't make it to London or who are physically unable to queue. The service is available on the BBC homepage, the BBC News website and app, the iPlayer on BBC Parliament and the red button. Well, the queues for Westminster Hall have been stretching along Lambeth Bridge and Albert Embankment. Metropolitan Police officers, volunteers and stewards are managing the queue. Toilets and water fountains are provided at various points. Our correspondent John Maguire has been talking to those who have been queuing.
From across the United Kingdom and around the globe, they came and they waited and they queued. All for this. A fleeting but significant moment, a chance to say goodbye not just to a monarch, but to a woman who meant so much to so many. Catherine had flown in from the United States just to be here today.
Very emotional and very poignant, very touching to see everyone go in and pay their respects. And you can just feel the love that everyone has for her.
Other journeys weren't as far, but no less important.
She had compassion, empathy, forgiveness and love. And I think that has given more to the world than anything. If only other leaders could be that way, wouldn't we live in a wonderful place?
It was amazing. I wouldn't have missed it. It was worth waiting 11 hours. It really was.
I thought to myself, I'll never see her again. So this was the opportunity that I wanted to go and pay my respects.
Maureen and her daughter Emmeline made the decision to come this morning and entered via the accessible queue.
She got you through your life, didn't she, Mum? Yeah, so we're here on behalf of our whole family, aren't we? Past and present.
Along the 2-mile queue that straddles both sides of the River Thames, there are volunteers on hand to help. Multi-faith teams are here to offer support and solace. This morning the Archbishop of Canterbury joined them after playing a leading role in recent days.
And the idea of coming to see people here today?
I see how people are, where they've come from. Most people are in very good shape. I had a couple of conversations yesterday where the process had renewed their sense of grief over their own losses.
Yes, I've heard that a lot, yes.
And you know that, and particularly coming out, chaplains have found that.
Leading politicians will have been in Westminster Hall many times, but never before to pay their respects to their monarch. By day and by night, they will continue to come over the next few days, compelled by their own reasons, with their own stories, but with one thing in common, their desire to say thank you and to say goodbye. John Maguire, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, as John was saying there, that queue does stretch for several miles, as you'll be able to see from these pictures. We hope you'll be able to see the queues along the bridge there. That's the live shot from Westminster, as you can see. and there are tens of thousands of people who are waiting to pay their respects. And this is the queue much closer to Westminster Hall, that zigzag queue that takes quite a while for people to get through, but as you can see, there is movement, and people have reported that they haven't actually had to wait all that long. Well, we can go now to our correspondent Frankie McCamley, who is far away from them. She's at the back of the queue. Frankie.
Well, yes, Rita, we're towards the back of the queue. We're just next to HMS Belfast, as you can see. We're around 2.5 miles from the front of the queue, and people here are being told they've got about an 8 or 9 hour wait. But the queue stretches way beyond us under Tower Bridge. Right now, we believe it's around 4 miles long, and I'll just show you some of the queue now. We've got some people walking one way, and just behind us is the queue, and it's very stop-start. You're either stuck in a crowd or you're chasing after people or walking quite fast, which is what people are doing now. Now, this is a huge operation. You can probably see behind me there are plenty of stewards on hand to help. Also lining the route, museums and local restaurants are open, providing refreshments and comfort breaks. There's also 500 portaloos running along this route for people who are coming down. Now, if you do want to come down, the advice is to bring lots of snacks, wear comfortable footwear. You're going to be standing around for a very long time, and be prepared to make some friends. We've seen many friendships made along the route. Travel advice too, do check before you travel, avoid Green Park Station and try and go on foot as much as possible. But Rita, I mean, the atmosphere here throughout the day, it's been very calm, it's been very friendly. People know they're in for a very long wait, and many people down here just want to be part of these few days that are going to go down in the history books.
Thank you so much, Frankie. Well, as we went on air, more details of the funeral were released by Buckingham Palace. Let's go back now to Sarah Campbell, who can tell us more. Sarah.
Yes, good afternoon, Rita. Well, first thing to say is that tomorrow evening at 7:30, the King and his siblings will take their places around the coffin inside Westminster Hall and hold a 15-minute vigil. That's at 7:30 tomorrow. And then on Monday morning at 6:30, the doors to the public at Westminster Hall will close, and that is the day of the state funeral. So just to share with you some details, at 10:35, the Queen's coffin will be taken by a bearer party to the gun carriage that was waiting. There will be a procession from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey. It is a short journey. Following the gun carriage will be the King and his siblings, and behind that, walking side by side, the Prince Harry and Prince William. At 11 o'clock, the funeral will begin at the Abbey. It will be led by the Dean of Westminster. The sermon will be given by the Archbishop of Canterbury. It holds 2,000 people. There will be heads of state, there will be dignitaries, there will be Governor-Generals, plus members of the public as well, including some from charities that the Queen was involved with over her decades as monarch. The service will end around midday. Before it does, there will be a national 2 minutes silence, followed by the national anthem. There will then be a further procession from Westminster Abbey to Wellington Arch. Now that route will go via the Mall and round Buckingham Palace, so more opportunities for people to gather to watch that. At that point, the coffin will be transported by road to Windsor. There will be another procession up the Long Walk into the grounds of Windsor Castle, where there will be a smaller committal service. During the last hymn, the imperial state crown, the orb and sceptre will be removed, will be passed to the Dean and placed on the high altar. And as the coffin is lowered into the royal vault, we're told a piper will play a lament. There will be a private burial service later on that evening when the Queen and her late husband, Prince Philip, will be buried together in King George VI Chapel. Rita.
Sarah, thank you. Sarah Campbell reporting. As we've seen, the Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Catherine, have been in Sandringham in Norfolk today to see the tributes left there for the Queen. The royal residence was packed with family memories for Her Majesty, and it gave her the chance to indulge her love of simple pleasures like walking the dogs or taking tea with the Women's Institute. Joe Black went to find out more.
While much of the focus has been in Scotland and London, here in Norfolk on the Sandringham estate is a growing blanket of flowers, a declaration of people's affection, admiration and appreciation for the late monarch. Where is the Queen, asks 3-year-old Matilda. She's up in the clouds, she's told by her mum Charlotte.
She has gone, yeah. The Queen was very important, wasn't she? She played a big part in everybody's lives, didn't she? But now, where is the Queen now? In heaven, yeah, in the sky.
She's gone.
She's gone to rest.
It's very emotional, and it's really, really feels as though it's a proper place to be on a day like this and a time like this.
They're going to learn about at school, so we can tell them they've bought flowers and say that they've been and laid little flowers for the Queen.
The late Queen was able, when she was at Sandringham, to drive around the estate, to be very much the lady with the headscarf on and the tartan skirt, and to go and see her foals being born, to walk her dogs around, and indeed to go to the WI, into her local shop.
The royal family is set off from Sandringham House to inspect the splendid crops being harvested on the King's estate in Norfolk.
This part of Norfolk and its surrounding areas held a particular place in the Queen's affections. Her father, King George VI, loved it here. This footage from 1943 shows him and the then Princess Elizabeth on a family bike ride to inspect the harvest. Like Balmoral, the private residence at Sandringham allowed the monarch time to relax. She and her family spent Christmas here, and in January, as president, she would attend the WI meeting. She'd sign the minutes, read annual reports, and one year even went to a very dark village hall on the day of a power cut. These meetings gave the Queen a couple of hours to chat with fellow members and enjoy some light refreshments.
She would pour the tea for them and offer them the cakes. And we'd just all chat amongst ourselves, and then a little while later the chair would sort of go back a little bit and the handbag would come up and the lipstick would come out, and that was the cue to the lady in waiting. We were getting ready to move, and that really in a nutshell is a meeting. It's magical. I mean, however many times you do it, it's still like doing the first one.
It was very odd and it's like a miracle, really.
Since the Queen's death, the pupils at Sandringham and West Newton Primary School have been reflecting on their memories of meeting her and other members of the royal family, often at the estate's churches or events like the annual flower show.
I'm very pleased that I did get to meet her, and I feel proud that I actually got the chance, because a lot of people don't get the chance to meet some of the royal family. Well, she gave us all a bit of a wave, and she's really kind and gentle. She asked how the school was getting on. I think I responded that it was getting on really nice. I was really enjoying it.
You've met the future king, and that's obviously quite a thing, isn't it? How are you feeling knowing you've already met him?
I feel happy, and I feel proud a bit.
Since Queen Elizabeth's death was announced, around 100,000 people have travelled here to pay their respects, to bid farewell and say thank you. For many people here, she was a neighbour, the sovereign who loved this part of Norfolk. Jo Black, BBC News, on the Sandringham estate.
The time is 18 minutes past 1, our top story this lunchtime. Tens of thousands of people queue to pay their respects to the Queen as details of her funeral are announced. And we'll have the latest on what's happening with energy costs this winter.
Coming up on the BBC News channel, Great Britain's Davis Cup campaign starts in disappointing style and ends in the early hours as they're beaten by the United States in Glasgow.
A Ukrainian government advisor says around 1,000 dead bodies have been found in the recently liberated city of Izium, which had been under Russian occupation for months. The number of dead in Izium hasn't been officially announced or independently verified. The city has been heavily damaged by shelling. From Kyiv, Hugo Bachega sent this report.
This is what the Russians left behind in Izium, a key city now back in Ukrainian hands. Almost nothing remains untouched by the war. These are the visible scars, What lies beneath, it's still not clear. Bodies are being found and allegations of torture are emerging. The horrors of life under occupation.
We were staying in the basements without food and water. Russia was providing humanitarian help, and initially I refused to take it. To be honest, I didn't want to take anything from Russia, but we had nothing to eat. We had to survive.
Ukraine is pressing ahead. It says all invaded territory will be taken back. It knows it won't be easy, but it feels it's got the momentum. Here, a show of defiance, a visit by President Zelensky with the front line just miles away. His message was as clear as ever.
You see that Russia is destroyed, and you see the mashup of this tragedy, but the main thing that we are coming back and we are on the way to the end.
But Russia is fighting back. Perhaps it's no coincidence that this time they attacked the president's hometown. A dam was hit and residents had to evacuate. Ukraine's advance in Kharkiv has been stunning. Officials say an area larger than the Count of Devon was recaptured in just a few days.
But what happens next? In the south, the situation is said to be more difficult. There, the top prize is the city of Kherson. As many as 20,000 Russian troops are believed to be holding up with limited supplies. After pushing the Russians out of the northeast, the Ukrainians hope to do the same elsewhere.
Much will depend on what this man decides to do. President Putin today arrived in Uzbekistan for talks with regional leaders. At the top of the agenda, a meeting with President Xi of China. For the Kremlin, the visit is designed to show that Russia isn't isolated and the Western sanctions haven't worked. But with his army and the economy in trouble, the world is waiting to see his next move. Hugo Mashega, BBC News, Kyiv.
Here in the next few days, we should be hearing from our energy suppliers about what is happening to our bills in 2 weeks' time. It's been a week since the government announced the energy price guarantee, which brings down the amount that bills were due to increase by in October. But the vast majority of households will still see an increase in the rate that they pay as we move into the autumn. Our Consumer Affairs correspondent Coletta Smith has been finding out what it'll mean for your bill.
Keeping the lights on is getting more expensive for most of us next month. But many of the parents at this school are facing unimaginable choices.
Everybody's feeling the pinch, everybody's starting to make decisions that they never thought they'd have to make, and they're difficult decisions, but they don't come anywhere close to the decisions that the most needy have to make. And nobody living today, and I think for generations, nobody's made this decision, difficult ones about what we sacrifice, and food, energy and clothing and books for children should definitely not be on the list.
The government stepped in last week and reduced the amount the price cap will go up by.
This government is moving immediately to introduce a new energy price guarantee that will give people certainty on energy bills.
So direct debit customers on a basic default tariff will now be charged 34 pence per kilowatt hour for electricity and 10.3 pence for gas. But everyone's bill will look different. For a typical household, it's around £2,500 a year, which is £1,000 more than this time last year. But that's just to give you an idea of what the new prices will look like. If you use more gas and electricity than that, you'll be paying more than that. The government are also knocking £400 off everyone's bill for the next 6 months. But October's price is still a rise, and millions of people have already been struggling.
When you are on an income support, it's very hard to cope with it. See how it goes.
Got an email saying it's going up, but we don't know how much yet.
Oh mate, like it's unaffordable now. Like, it is, what can you do though? It's always going to be like that.
This neighbourhood is one of many likely to see a big increase in the number of people unable to afford their bills.
What's happening now is the deepening of fuel poverty experience. So some people will have been experiencing that for the last 10 years. Maybe it's just got even harder than it did. These are the solid wall houses. They need a bit more money investing than do houses with cavity wall insulation. But it's an area where lots of people don't have very much money, and then where people really need that kind of extra support in order to be able to live decent lives, to be well enough to go to school and to go to work.
Without extra help targeted at the most vulnerable, it's feared millions more families won't be able to afford the bills as the price goes up and the temperature goes down. Coletta Smith, BBC News in Leeds.
The Treasury is considering removing a cap on bankers' bonuses as part of a post-Brexit shake-up of city rules. The BBC has been told that no final decisions have been made, but that the Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, is considering it as a way of making London a more attractive place for global banks to do business. Our business editor, Simon Jack, is here with me. It would be quite controversial, wouldn't it?
Very, I would say, yes. The bonus cap came in 2014. It was an EU-wide regulation, which means that bankers can only get twice their base salary in total compensation. The bonus is 2 times your salary. It was introduced to prevent excessive risk-taking. If you limit the rewards, you limit the amount of risk. It was in the aftermath of the great financial crisis. What happened, though, was that banks had to put up their base pay in order to compensate for that, pushing up their fixed costs. They don't like that. It means that their fixed costs go up. They can't align pay in line with profits and losses in any given year. The rationale is you get rid of the cap, people do more business here, London becomes more attractive, and the rest of the UK, you get more growth, very important for the Chancellor, and you get more tax. So that's the economic case, which I say is not everyone agrees with it. Politically, of course, the case is much harder to make at a time when people are facing hardship through a cost of living crisis. Unions are calling it a grave insult to workers. So it's going to be very interesting to see how serious they are with it, but they're very much in line with their growth at all costs. It's just going to be interesting to see whether the European Union will have a look at this and saying, well, you're diverging, you're trying to make London more attractive than Paris or Amsterdam. Maybe we'll take some retaliatory action. We'll see in the coming weeks how serious they are about it. But it's very much in line with their growth at all costs message.
OK, Simon, many thanks. Simon Jack reporting. A funeral mass has been taking place today for 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, who died after being shot at her home in Liverpool nearly a month ago. Pink ties, jackets, scarves and bows were worn by those attending the service after her family asked people to wear a splash of pink. Well, let's go live now to our correspondent Judith Moritz, who's in Liverpool for us now. Judith.
Yes, and crowds of people lined the streets here and came out to see Olivia's coffin as it was brought by a horse-drawn hearse to the church. And following as part of the funeral procession was her mum, Cheryl Corbell. Now, Cheryl Corbell was herself injured in the gun attack which killed Olivia and still nursing the wrist injury from that night. She gave the eulogy. She said that her daughter was the family mimic, that she had a great imagination and would have made a great lawyer, she said, as she had an answer for everything. And the Archbishop of Liverpool, Reverend Malcolm McMahon, also spoke, and he linked Olivia's death to that of the Queen. He said that King Charles III has described his mother's life as a life well lived, and the same can be said of Olivia. Now, one of the more poignant aspects of this morning, I think, is that you could hear the shouts of Olivia's school friends playing in the playground just next door, her primary school just next to the church. And the school's head teacher, Rebecca Wilkinson, spoke earlier about how the school has been remembering Olivia today.
So the wishes of the family in church were that everyone wore a splash of pink. So today in school, the children are all wearing a splash of pink. We've got pink hearts in the windows, facing the main road. We've got ribbons on the fence, pink ribbons on the fence.
Well, earlier this week, Merseyside Police searched a golf course near to here for the guns used in the attack. So far, 9 men have been arrested in connection with Olivia's murder. No charges, though, and yesterday a £50,000 reward was offered for information which may lead to the conviction of those responsible.
Thank you very much, Judith. Judith Moritz reporting. Now, hundreds of people have reported seeing a shooting star across the sky over Scotland and Northern Ireland. The UK Meteor Network said it began getting reports of the fireball last night. Scientists are using video footage filmed by the public to work out whether the object travelling across the night sky was a meteor or space junk and where it came from. It's not yet known if it landed or burnt up in the atmosphere. Well, I want to take you back to Westminster Hall, where people are continuing to file in quietly to pay their tributes to the Queen, who is lying in state. people have been coming into Westminster Hall from 5 p.m. yesterday, and this is the first full day in which the public can file past to say a final farewell to Her Majesty. OK, let's take a look at the weather now. Here's Helen Willits. Helen.
Rita, thank you. More cloud across the skies of London once again at the moment, but it is drier. This was Greenwich just a little while ago. But it is, as I say, for the most part dry and fine. But it feels fresher out and about, so that's worth bearing in mind if you are heading to London for the next couple of days. There's a very outside chance of a shower tomorrow, but for the most part, as you can see, it is set fair. But there's a blustery breeze out there, and it's a breeze that's coming down from the north, and hence the chillier feel, both by day and by night. That is ushering in some Arctic air, our first significant chilly blast of the autumn. So cold by day, or colder by day, and chilly by night as well. But there is some sunshine around as well, and it is dry across many parts. This is the northeast coast. Not too far to the north of that, quite a lot of showers have gathered across parts of central and northern Scotland. There are 1 or 2 for Northern Ireland, 1 or 2 in eastern England and Irish sea coast of England and Wales. We even had the odd one filtering into the northwest Midlands, but on balance, there's a lot of dry weather around today. It's bright with some sunny spells, but temperatures, particularly in the south, are 2 or 3 degrees down compared with those of yesterday. And there's a brisk wind blowing as well. That's a real feature of the weather. It's going to become quite strong actually in northern and eastern areas through tonight and into tomorrow, blowing more showers southwards. But actually inland, in sheltered areas, it will be cooler tonight, even in the south, single figures, but some ground frost in the glens of Scotland, true sign that autumn is upon us. Tomorrow, as I say, that wind is really quite strong in eastern areas, and probably it'll pull a few more showers into the eastern side of England. There may, on balance, be fewer further west across Northern Ireland as the winds start to ease here, but probably peaking with gusts of 45 miles an hour for northern and eastern parts of both England and Scotland, so it will feel cooler. And it might be that either today or tomorrow will be the first day since the beginning of June that we don't reach 20 degrees Celsius somewhere in the UK, and that's because of that wind direction. Now, the weekend keeps high pressure moving in, so actually we pick up a bit more mist and fog by then, and we do have a weather front sinking into the north as well. But actually early Saturday could be the coldest of this spell. Temperatures down to 1 even in rural areas further south, so we could see some frost, isolated frost elsewhere. But a fine start Saturday, perhaps a little bit of mist and fog around, and our weather front coming into the north to give some rain for the north of Scotland. But then as that moves its way southwards through the weekend, it's more likely to just be an area of cloud. It's likely that many areas will stay dry even into Monday, just the outside chance of a shower. Rita.
Thank you, Helen. A reminder now of our top story. Tens of thousands of people queue to pay their respects to the Queen as details of her funeral are announced. Well, that is all from BBC News at 1, so it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we now join the BBC's news teams where you are. Bye-bye.